because the government is interested to promote exports. And I can give you one example. So there was some time ago, the government was saying that India is a country of Gandhi and Nehru. We believe in Ahimsa. I mean, we didn't have the same to import arms, but we had the same of exporting arms. But now the government, wherever you see Prime Minister Modi going to any defense expo or any interacting with the armed forces, he is openly encouraging that we need to be a major manufacturer and we need to export arms. And I think the mindset, that mindset which was holding us back earlier, has actually been kept open. And that is the reason why you see India's defense production, which was around 60-70,000 crore before Modi government came to power, has reached up to 1,20,000 crore.
Today we will explore the global weapon manufacturing trends, and we are privileged to have two esteemed speakers, Dr. Laxman Behera and Captain Sunil Kumar. In this session, we will currently trends and in the global weapon manufacturing and the impact of the emerging technologies and their implication of the national security of Bharat. First, I would like to invite Captain Sunil Kumar with the global advancement in the weapon manufacturing and the integration for emerging technologies such as AI and robotics, and how can India strategically enhance the naval capability to stay competitive, and what keys areas should be prioritized in the term of innovation and collaboration to strengthen the Indian maritime defense sector and genre. Please, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was told that the panel discussion is on defense manufacturing in India. There seems to be slight shift in the goalpost, and the discussion was to be steered by Professor Laxman Behera. I was not told to bring any presentation or structured talk. So I was prepared for a discussion, but nevertheless, if the main speaker is not there, I will try and structure my talk in such a way so that it is beneficial for all of us. As far as defense strategy, manufacturing, geopolitics, I will try and weave it together so that it is some amount of learning experience for all of you. When we talk of defense, even Kautilya, Chanakya as we call him, had mentioned 7 important arms for growth of a nation or a nation state. That included the head of the government, Raja, the state, the treasury, the business, the army, and the allies. Now we will focus on the last 2, the army and the allies. Allies actually means your friendly relationship or enmity with people who are around you or who are likely to influence things around you. When we talk of army is basic strength that your armed forces have and the weaponry which is there at the disposal of that army to ensure that others do not come in conflict with you. They are apprehensive about coming in conflict with you. They try and maintain friendly relationship with you. The armed forces should be used if there is a need, but their primary purpose is that they should be so strong and this strength should be visible to your neighbors or the people around you, and they should act as a deterrent. Deterrent means you are trying to prevent war. War is something that doesn't result in gain for anyone. War is a costly affair. When forced, we will fight. But the best is all the energy and resources should be put into creating armed forces which act as a deterrent, and it creates the right environment for economic growth of that particular nation or nation state. So when we talk of armed forces primarily have 3 components. It is for the purpose of maintaining sanctity of warfare. People specialize in specific things. Like army. Army talks of war over land. Over land, they can come direct eye to eye with the enemy, or they can be used for control of a particular area that you have won. Second is Air Force. Air Force is primarily projecting air power in the area where army is in conflict or you want to suppress the enemy's defenses. Third part is Navy. When we talk of Navy, Navy becomes a tool. If we look at the history, how did Britishers, Dutch, Portuguese come to India? Through their ships. So that is, Navy becomes a means of projecting power which is away from your shores. Army and Air Force, you will end up using in an area where you have contiguous land. Army can go to your border areas or surrounding areas, whereas Navy or the naval ships can help you project power in land which is far, far away from your shores. If India sends its fleet to North America, South America, so you can project power in that area also using the Navy. So people can feel free to ask questions if there are any, because that will help me understand whether you are grasping something and if there are any queries. If you have any queries, I would like to address those queries also so that your understanding is complete. When we come to warfare, as mentioned in our Shastras, Indian system talks of Dharma Yudh. Dharma Yudh actually is what? Dharma is not religion. Dharma is actually bound by certain norms which are perceived as the right thing to do, the correct thing to do. And second is known as Koot Yudh, using Kootniti. If we go by the rhetoric, Dharma Yudh should be the right thing and it should be winning all over. But generally it is seen that Dharma Yudh also will have a component of Kootniti. And Koot Yudh, it helps you generally win. Whether we talk of Mahabharata or we talk of Ramayana, even there you will see the purpose may have been Dharma Yudh. But Kootniti is used at all levels primarily to ensure that you have an upper hand. Upper hand means you have edge over your enemy. Then we come to the current scenario. India, from the time we have become independent, has had armed forces. But invariably, we are the world's largest importer of arms. The desire to create defense manufacturing probably was missing for the first 50-60 years, and very little manufacturing took place in India. A country like Israel, which was created only in 1948, became a big supplier or big exporter of arms in the world. They may not be exporting significant component, but they have very good defense systems which they are exporting. They are selling even to India. The total imports that we make, I think out of which around 3% is coming from Israel. So if they could do it, even we could have done it, provided the emphasis was laid by the country's leadership. But in the last 15-20 years, a lot of work has happened, whether it was some component of outsourced contract, like if we are buying something for somebody, we have told them that some amount of manufacturing you will have to do in India to help Indian industry to develop. Now that push has increased in the last 10 years. In last 10 years, significant effort has gone in. The capability is developing gradually. But you have to understand one thing. When we talk of defense manufacturing, armed manufacturing, it is not like buying a scooter which will last 10 years, 15 years. Defense systems, once purchased, they remain in service for 20, 30, 40, 50 years or even more. So it is not every day that procurement happens of big systems. And the technology, that is why it takes time to develop. All of you are aware of what is happening around us in the last 10, 15 years. I am sure all of you watch news, read magazines. You have seen the kind of wars that take place around us. Defense systems, because of their long gestation period, long life, and high cost, they tend to be manufactured not by everybody, but by a few countries which have the financial muscle to do it. Lot of resources have to be devoted to research in that field. And till such time, it is seen that in war, when people go or some country goes into the war, they have a plan. But if you have plan A, B and C, after entering the war, couple of days into it, you will realize plan A has failed, B has failed, C has failed, and there are different constraints that are imposed upon you. The weapon system which has been developed to perform in a particular manner is being put through a different challenge. So any country which is selling arms or weapons today ends up selling weapons at a higher price if that weapon system has got tested in war, in battle. That is why you'll find in the last 30, 40 years, every 7, 8 or 10 years, US goes into war. What they do is, they are actually testing the newly developed weapon systems so that they can sell it at a higher price. If we look at the defense manufacturing statistics of the world, America has got almost 45% share of arms export of all the countries which are exporting. Almost 45%, the land share is by USA. Russia used to be around 24-25%, but it is down to 11 now because last 2 years it has been fighting its own battle. It has no time or resources to export much. Though for India, it is still selling a considerable bit. Even today, almost 36% of our defense systems are coming from Russia. When we talk of, now I don't know what I should go into. Should I go into specific naval things? When we talk of Navy, in Navy there are 3 primary things. We have ships, we have submarines, we have aircrafts. When we talk of ships, India has a fairly big shipbuilding industry. And the technology, when it is developed, for many, many decades, technology initially was developed in the armed forces and then transferred to civil. Whether we talk of a big thing like aircrafts, drones, aerodynamic designs, or a small thing like duct tape. It was developed initially for use by armed forces and later on transferred to the civil. Or a small thing like today, lot of younger generation children, because of their educational requirement or job requirement, are staying away from home. And they resort to either meals ready to eat or something that gets cooked in 2 minutes. These meals were initially prepared by the defense research laboratories for the soldiers who had to fight on the front. And later on the technology was transferred to the corporates for civil usage. But with the advent of what he mentioned, AI, the technology is evolving at a very fast pace. This change has reversed, let's say in the last 10 years or somewhere around that, maybe 15 years. The technology is being developed for civil use and later on it is being adopted for even defense use. Just like that, we get to hear about drones and their influence in all spheres of our life, whether it is delivery of a small thing or whether it is carrying of heavy load from place A to place B in difficult terrain, mountainous areas. Drones are being used for ferrying items from one place to another place. Now, when was the first drone made? Anybody, any idea? First drone was made in 1917 by a defense scientist for use by UK. So that is how I was saying that technology invariably was developed by various countries for their armed forces because they were using armed forces for projecting their power, for controlling other countries. Now, when we talk of India's defense manufacturing, lot of effort, energy, time is being devoted, resources are being devoted by the governments. But there are significant challenges in India's defense manufacturing capability development. We have come a long way in certain fields. Like when we talk of missiles, we have a very good missile program wherein we have including hypersonic missiles, missiles which run at 5 times the speed of sound. Now such missiles in any scenario, let me come to very basics. When we talk of war, in war, how will somebody fight the enemy? There are 2-3 things. One is we see enemy eye to eye and have direct combat, which army does, infantry does. And when we talk of beyond visual range fighting, we end up using sensors. Sensors for surface or above the surface, radars are used, which give us fantastic range. That range is, we have radar systems which can tell us a aircraft or object which is flying in the air, even at a distance of 500 kilometers away from us. Now, once we know that something has been detected, how do we deal with it? It has been detected. We need a computer. That computer follows the profile and it tells you what is the size of that thing, at what speed it is flying. Now, once you are able to spot the speed at which some body in air is flying, you can make out what it is. And your air defense systems can help you deal with it. Now, air defense systems initially could be long range missiles. If you have detected something at 500 kilometers and it is closing in towards you, your computer is telling you that the speed at which it is moving, the direction in which it is moving, it is coming at you. You have to deal with it. You can fire a missile which can tackle that thing at 400 kilometers, 350 kilometers, 300 kilometers. Then you'll have short range systems, medium range systems, which will be dealing from something that is from 15, 20 kilometers to about 50 kilometers. Now, something comes even beyond that, then it comes to visual range. You have guns which have fantastic firepower. There are guns which can fire 6,000 bullets a minute. That actually means that in front of you, that gun will create a shield, a sheet made of bullets that you are firing, and it will not allow anything to come in and hit you. These things are primarily used by naval ships. And when we talk of subsurface warfare, in subsurface warfare, we have submarines going down under in the water, and they can attack the ships on surface, or with the sub-launched missiles, submarine-launched missiles, they can tackle a surface threat also. Like today we have submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles, travel over long distances. They can tackle surface threats. If there is a target which is on a surface, like we are closing in on the enemy coast, and we have our troops which will be entering for tackling a surface threat or a shore threat. Submarine can fire submarine-launched ballistic missiles, which will come onto the surface, and thereafter it will be like a normal missile. When we talk of nuclear energy in the field of defense, there are two things for which nuclear energy can be used. One is for propulsion, for moving a defense platform from point A to point B. And second is for the firepower. You may have a nuclear capable weapon installed on that thing. The Aryant that we have, Aryant is a nuclear propelled submarine, which actually means it has got a nuclear power plant installed inside. Nuclear power plant will provide power to the submarine for providing it mobility, moving from place A to place B. Now, if naval ships and submarines, if they are sailing, what is the conventional form of propulsion? Conventional submarines are diesel-electric. Diesel-electric means submarines are expected to be silent. How do they become silent? Today, we see EVs, electronic vehicles. We had vehicles with petrol engine, diesel engine, but we have EVs today. What is the primary or the basic difference between them as far as noise level is concerned? Same thing was there in the submarines. Conventional submarines had diesel-electric propulsion. A submarine would need to run the diesel engine to charge the batteries which have been installed. So out of 24 hours, a submarine will come close to the surface, run its diesel engine for 6 hours and charge the batteries. There are huge sized batteries placed on submarines. Once the batteries are charged, next 18 hours, the submarine will run on the batteries. Now when it runs on the batteries, it is silent, very quiet. So if enemy is using the sonar, it is making very little noise for that sonar to pick up. This was the advantage. And nuclear power plant, it is again making very little noise, and diesel engine will require diesel. If the submarine is away from the shore, and is running for 40 days, there is a possibility it will run out of diesel. But for the nuclear fuel, all of you know, even a small block of uranium can last for years. So that is the biggest advantage that nuclear technology has as far as propulsion of a defense platform is concerned. When we talk of armament, weaponry, I think Ariant class has got 12 Sagarika missiles, which is known as K-15, SLBM, submarine launched ballistic missile, with range of around 700 kilometers. They have another nuclear capable Nirbhay cruise missile.
A lot of missiles and even aircrafts from the US, the Russia, and other countries as well. But considering the power with the West and the US, we know that India doesn't have much of funds to invest in the defense because it is in the papers and it is in news all around in the media that most of our defense budget is into pensions and paying the army people and the stuff. So, sir, do we really need to develop our borders that strong, or it's just a myth that what if we'll be building a nuclear bomb and won't that be enough? Because we know that the more the nuclear power a country has, the more the global standpoint they hold.
Second last sentence.
So the more the nuclear power the country has, the more the global recognition the country holds.
Look, you mentioned two parts. First is you said, as far as defense expenditure is concerned, the government has enough funds, your GDP is growing year on year. The government's revenue collection is going up. And armed forces are like an insurance policy. All of you or your parents, once they are reaching a stage wherein they have liabilities, you have children who have to be looked after their education, their other social obligations have to be met. At that time, people take insurance policy. So armed forces are like insurance policy. How do you deter your enemy from indulging into a misadventure with you? Is only by having muscle power. Your enemy should know that if you trouble him, that other agency will react, and they will react in a manner which will impose significant cost on the adversary. If that doesn't happen, nobody will allow you to do trade. The trade will flourish or economy will flourish only if you have strong armed forces which projects the power of the country in such a manner that people don't indulge in misadventure with you. We have a fantastic growth environment. Why? Because our enemies are not in a position to attack us. Today, let us look at a real situation. Russia and Ukraine have been at war for the last 2 years. You look at Russia's economy, Russia's exports before the start of war and today. If any country ends up getting into a conflict with an enemy, there are significant costs that are imposed on the entire country. Every other effort of manufacturing is diverted towards fighting the war and maintaining your position. So, if you want not to get into a war, you have to have very strong armed forces so that they act as a deterrent and your country does not need to fight. The advent of nuclear or atomic bomb started with Second World War. And the basic aim of having nuclear weapons was deterrence. Now, if deterrence effect is not achieved, then the weapons are meaningless. Now, what Russia and US got into was arms race. They wanted to have more and more deterrence. They wanted to have more number of nuclear weapons than the adversary. There is no need to get into that. There is a certain threshold. If you have that many weapons or nuclear capable weapons, then you are in a position to deter the enemy from indulging in any kind of misadventure. And when you talk of India's capability, I will tell you, this nuclear submarine program was sanctioned some time ago. I don't remember the time when it was sanctioned. 2 nuclear submarines to be built for India at a cost of 40,000 crores. And if you talk of entire India's defense import basket, please Google it and see how many weapons, arms we are buying every year. So as far as money is concerned, it is not a major part which we should be concerned about. It is always better to have less expenditure on defense and more on economy, but it is something like an insurance policy which you can't ignore.
Why is India lacking in AMCA program, our 5th generation fighter jet, while countries like Turkey have started their test flights?
Because these projects for development of new kind of armament, when we talk of two industries specifically, whether it is building of ship, submarine or aircraft, it is an entire chain. Entire chain means you start with designing of something, then you build it, you get a propulsion system, you get sensors and you get armament for fitting on that. So this entire chain, very few countries have got it. Very few countries have got it. And if we need to compete with somebody, because when you do something for your own, then it is important that defense system is developed in a time-bound manner. If there is a significant delay, then the initial aim or the goal that was set, that may become irrelevant or meaningless in case of long delays. But if your capability is not developed and you are not getting sufficient support, then definitely you will end up spending more time. I will give you an example. Like Russia disintegrated in 1990. When USSR disintegrated, USSR had a fantastic military industrial complex. But the complex was spread over 15, 17 CIS countries. Certain plants, factories came into share of a country which had little use for that particular thing. Because they did not have use which USSR had, neither were they able to run that plant and their people were sitting jobless. Another example I'll give you, China picked up a lot of people from USSR at that time and brought them to their country, which helped China develop its defense industrial complex. So they have that edge. Otherwise, if somebody does on its own, it takes a fairly long time. I'll give you an example which probably you can Google and read also. When Russia disintegrated, there was an aircraft carrier Kiev class which was being manufactured in Ukraine. But Russia disintegrated. A country like Ukraine had no utility for that aircraft carrier. There was no need for them to project power. Neither they could project power nor they could afford to build and operate it. So that no work happened on that aircraft carrier Kiev class. In 11, 12 or 13 sometime, this aircraft carrier was procured by China. This was procured by China by a front company. And they gave assurance to Ukrainian leadership that they are taking this ship to Macau for converting it into a casino. But what did they actually do? Once it was purchased from them, they towed it straight away to a Chinese shipyard. And what was there in the shipyard? They were not their own manufacturers. They had entire shipbuilding manpower brought from Ukraine into their shipyard. They put the ship workers in their own shipyard. And within 3 to 5 years, they had the aircraft carrier ready. If you look at Indian history, Cochin shipyard was building the shipyard for more than 15 years. So if you get benefit or advantage of qualified manpower, which has experience of doing something, if you get technology from them, yes, you can do it at quick speed. Otherwise, it takes time.
Thank you very much, Captain Sunil Kumar sir, for the insightful defense whole analysis and insightful views on the all for armed forces. Now I would like to invite Dr. Behera. Dr. Behera, could you have share your insights on your current global trends in weapon manufacturing, and India can leverage a trend that strengthening the defense production and capability and competitiveness, and also India targeting 25 billion defense turnover and 5 billion export by 2025 under the Defense Production Export Promotion Policy 2020. And what are the key technology and infrastructure challenges still hinder the full self-resilience? Please, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really sorry for coming little late, but I was listening to my previous speaker. So then I was thinking, that this is a subject hardly discussed in not even universities, forget about the colleges. But I'm so happy that this subject, even though many colleges have a political science department, but hardcore military like the stuff like submarines, missiles, arms industry, arms production, hardly discussed. But I'm so happy that Vimas has taken up this subject, and I'm sure that the events like this will generate interest among the youth, and you will contribute immensely towards India's defense and security policies. Now, having said that, since this is a college and we can have some theoretical and some normative debates, and I am given the topic to speak on defense industry. Now, from purely normative sense, so we are talking about an industry which many also characterize as merchants of death, because this industry manufactures those items which are not used for your communications or for transport, but meant to be used to kill enemies. It may be used to deter enemies, like Captain Kumar was speaking about, but ultimately when it is used, like those are used in Russia-Ukraine war, or in Israel and Hamas war, many people thousands and thousands of people are being killed. But I don't want to discourage you that you should not take up this subject, because the items the industry is manufacturing can kill people. But since I'm sure many of you will be from the political science, and you know that there is a realistic theory. So that actually talks about that the country should have power. So military is actually is the heart of your power. So we can talk about the economic power which we are. So in fact, if you look at Indian economy, we are the 4th largest economy. Maybe we will be the 3rd largest economy very soon. And we are the 4th largest military spender. I think somebody was asking about the defense spending also. But can we say that we are we are among the top 10 defense manufacturing countries? Sadly, no. Sadly, no. And that is where the real power exists. We can have a 14 lakh army, maybe 50 odd squadron air force, or maybe dozens or 2 dozens of submarines. But if they are all imported, then you lack the power. Because at the time of crisis, the suppliers can actually can stop the supply. In fact, I just came from few days ago from Russia, and somebody was telling me that all the aircrafts that the Russian airlines are flying, they are either Airbus or the Boeing. Now, Boeing and Airbus, because of the war, they are actually not supplying the spare parts to Russian airlines. So just imagine that Russia, such a major power, has difficulty in operating the aircrafts. And forget about us. If you have a missile, and if from the US, and if and as you know, when you buy something, you sign an end user agreement that against whom you are using. So US won't allow that missile to be targeted on somebody which is US friend list. So that kind of restrictions can be imposed. So the point is that if you want to be a real power, then you need to have your own industry, you need to manufacture your own armaments. I know that today is a globalized world, you can manufacture all the things, but that doesn't mean that you will not manufacture the critical stuffs, even if it is reinventing the wheel, because you never know when that wheel will stop and then you will be denied. But I'm glad that India is making rapid progress, and those trend lines are obvious since 2014, because a lot of initiatives have been taken by the present government, and things are unfolding. In fact, if you have opened, not even newspaper, I think if you are active in social media, then you would see some tweets of Defense Minister that yesterday India has successfully tested the hypersonic missile, and this is a missile which not even US has actually perfected. Even though US is spending on that hypersonic technology for a long time, but it is Russia which actually first demonstrated its success, and China last year had that capability, and I think in 2020 we had a preliminary demonstration, and yesterday we had a full-fledged flight, and according to DRDO, we succeeded. So that's a tremendous sign. Now, before going into what has changed in India's defense industry sector, I'll briefly talk about the global arms industry. Now, I was just, and this is an industry, very few information you'll get to read. But if you are an avid reader, if you are keen interest, then you'll find many sources. which you can aggregate and can have a better idea. So this global defense industry is a large industry. So in fact, if you look at the turnover of the industry, it is around $600 billion. It's a quite big amount. So Indian economy is $4 trillion, but global defense production is around $600 billion. But who is actually contributing to that turnover? Unfortunately for us, major part of the production takes place either in US or in the Europe. Very little in our part of the world, if you exclude China. China is rapidly increasing, of course, but almost 50% of the global arms production takes place in the US. And then the Western Europe, your UK, France, Germany, Italy, those kind of countries, they also manufacture. Earlier, Russia used to be a big manufacturer. Even still, Russia is a big military power. But after the disintegration of Soviet Union, they have lagged in certain areas, particularly IT, electronics kind of areas. Now, one country which has actually tremendously increased its defense production is China. Now, before 2000, Chinese armed forces, they were reluctant to even accept their own product, defense equipment. But their government was very determined that Chinese, and one thing you have to accept about the Chinese leadership is very determined. If they want to achieve something, and they have these 5-year plans, and they make sure that those plans are implemented in letter and spirit. And you see, in 20 years' time, China's defense production, defense industry, defense technology has jumped to such distance, so far, that now the US is now trying to compete in certain areas. Quantum technology, artificial intelligence, Chinese scientists, Chinese technologies far ahead, and they are exporting to a large number of countries. Even US is now on the catch-up mode. Now earlier, rest of the countries, rest of the world were catching up with the US, but now the things have turned, table has turned. Now US is also looking at what are the technologies that other countries are developing, they can actually catch up. Now, having said that, I won't say that things are so depressing for us. Now, this war, Russia-Ukraine war, and even Israel and Hamas war has actually gave us a lot of lessons. Now, even if the US and Europe, they are dominant defense manufacturers, but they have developed a tendency, they have developed a lethargic tendency. Because after the Cold War, they thought that the long artisan war, where the countries will fight for years and years, those era are over. So they actually went on a, what we say, peacetime production mode. That okay, if you have to produce, if you have a defense company, Lockheed Martin or Boeing, if you are manufacturing aircrafts, okay, let's say you will manufacture 100 aircrafts, maybe over a 20-year period of time. So armed forces, they were also not they didn't have urgency because they were not fighting distance war. Those equipments were not required on a priority basis, so they could afford that. But when this war happened in the Russia-Ukraine war, that they suddenly found that they are not even able to supply ammunition to a country to fight one war at one front. Because every month or year you need to fire millions of rounds of the ammunition. Even the US, with all the might, and they are spending almost 50% of the global defense spending, almost $800 billion. With that kind of money, even they are finding it difficult to manufacture ammunitions, artillery guns, and those kind of small stuff, not the very big stuff. But they don't have the capacity. Now this gives us some certain scopes. For countries like in India, even if you look at India's defense export, I think the moderator was referring to that, we have actually achieved quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. Our defense export is around 21,000 crore, even though it is not very high in terms of other countries, in terms of comparing with other countries. But if you compare with our base, if you compare with our past, and there was a time in 2014-15, our defense export was not even 1,000 crore. But now we have crossed 21,000 crores. And the target is to achieve 51,000 crore. And if the momentum is sustained, and we can achieve that. I accept that. But And that, in fact, I mean, if you look at the exports, so some of the items are going to the areas which are not very peaceful areas. Armenia. So yesterday there was a news that we are selling Akash missiles to Armenia. Armenia, which is having a problem with Azerbaijan. We are exporting some items to Middle East, which is not in a happy situation. Now we'll talk about that in some detail, but let's look at what has changed in India's defense production over the years. Now we have a large defense industry, there is no doubt about it. And this industry has been established for a long time, even before independence. The Britishers, they had some rudimentary form of arms production in India, and the first factory in fact goes back to 1802, when the factory was created in Calcutta. Kosipur is the right place, and where the Britishers started manufacturing certain ammunition. Now over a period of time we have increased. In fact, the real momentum actually came after the 1960 war defeat with the China. And that led to creation of certain DPSUs, and we added new ordnance factories. In 1958, in fact, before 1962, we had the vision to create a new R&D agency that is called DRDO. That was the 3-4 years before the 1962 war, and that organization has grown into a very big organization, DRDO, with 50 odd laboratories and some 7,000 scientists, some 10,000 other workers. It's a quite huge organization. But unfortunately, we didn't have a big vision how to make the best out of the defense industry. And the result, we are quite happy, okay, something is being produced, and whatever we are not able to produce, we will be happy to import. And there were many suppliers, especially in the Cold War time, and we were happy buying from other countries. But when Modi government came to power in 2014, that government took a conscious decision that nothing doing, we need to develop our own industry, and there was some sign of self-reliance. The Modi government were quite determined on self-reliance, and lot of policies have been taken over the last 10 years period of time. I'm not counting those policies, but I will give you one example of what were the situation earlier and what is the now. Now earlier, if you are a private company and if you want to manufacture tank, then you have to take a permission from the government. And that permission used to take, the time to take the permission used to take 3 to 4 years time. Even companies like L&T and Tata, they used to wait for 3 to 4 years just to seek an approval from the government that they are interested to manufacture tanks. Now, if you are fortunate, if you get a license, then what was the condition? That you get a license, you have to manufacture your item within 3 years' time, and you have to manufacture 50 tanks, nothing more than that. Those were the conditions. If you can't manufacture a tank within 3 years, then your license is invalid. You have to apply for a new license, and if you are fortunate, you will get, otherwise not. And if you are manufacturing, let's say if you are Tata and the government says that you have to manufacture only 50 tanks, and there is no guarantee that the Indian Ministry of Defense or the Indian Army will buy. That you can understand, Indian Army has to buy the best tank. But again, the government was also not allowing the export. So if you are industry, why would you manufacture tank? But now things have changed, because I want to give one example just to realize how things have changed. Now the government is saying that if you are interested to manufacture tank, you apply for a license and you don't have to visit any ministry. You can apply online. Your license will be given online, and you can manufacture within a period of 15 years. So there is no 3-year limit. Now the government is encouraging exports, and whatever export figure you are seeing, from less than 1,500 crores to 21,000 crore is largely because the government is interested to promote exports. And I can give you one example. So there was some time ago, the government was saying that India is a country of Gandhi and Nehru. We believe in ahimsa. I mean, we didn't have the same to import arms, but we had the same of exporting arms. But now the government, wherever you see Prime Minister Modi going to any defense expo or any interacting with the armed forces, he is openly encouraging that we need to be a major manufacturer and we need to export arms. And I think that mindset which was holding us back earlier has actually been kept open. And that is the reason why you see India's defense production, which was around 60-70,000 crore before Modi government came to power, has reached up to 1,20,000 crore. So it is a major jump. I'm not saying whatever we are manufacturing is enough. I think we need to step up our production, maybe another 50-60,000 crore per year. And so if we manufacture the defense items around 2 lakh crore every year, that will not only meet our own requirement, and there will be space for exports. Only after meeting your own requirement, if you export, then you don't have to depend on imported items. I'm not saying that in the next 10 years we will stop importing everything, because that needs a lot of money on R&D, and we are not spending much on R&D. So that is a key lacuna. Even if we want to be Atmanirbhar or self-reliant, we are not spending enough on R&D. I will give you one statistic and then I will stop, because we are running out of time. You might have heard the company, Chinese company Huawei. One company Huawei spends more than on R&D, which is more than the entire R&D budget of India, both government and the private sector included. So that is the distance we have to cover. So if you want to be self-reliant, we need to realize that the basis of self-reliance is technology, and we need to spend on technology. So that's why more and more money from the defense budget has to be devoted to R&D. I'm not saying put all R&D money in DRDO, and the private sector is capable of developing technologies. And we see that if Tata is manufacturing aircraft, or L&T is manufacturing artillery guns, Bharat Forge is developing some artillery guns, so obviously they have the capacity to manufacture defense equipment. But if government sponsors them, government gives them money to develop new technologies, obviously they will develop technologies. It will take some time, but I think R&D in the private sector is a better option than putting all the money in a government sector. So with that, I think I will stop. If there are some questions, then we can take up.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful speech on the defense manufacture and on the special weapon genre. So let's begin with the question answer session. Before asking your question, first please introduce yourself and then proceed with the question. First I have to ask a question. So after sir 2014, what are the implications on data of R&D, and what are the budget drastically change on R&D only in the defense genre?
Thank you. So I think, if you look at India's defense expenditure, so it is growing year on year. So there is no doubt. So, and given our security scenario, no government will actually reduce defense spending, although it's not increasing the way all of us expect, but I think it is growing. So now I think the latest defense budget is around 6,21,000 crore. Although in terms of GDP, in terms of central government expenditure, it is not high. There is a declining trend, but it's largely because the GDP is growing quite at a faster pace, and the central government's expenditure is also quite growing at a faster pace. So defense budget has not kept pace with the GDP growth or the central government expenditure. So due to that, in terms of GDP or the central government expenditure has come down. But in absolute numbers, so the MOD or the defense establishment continues to get more and more money. But ultimately, I mean, one thing is very true about the money or the resources. Resources are always scarce. So I'm talking about the US. US spends $800 billion compared to some $75 billion. That is the contrast between US and us. But even if you ask the armed forces of the US, they say they don't have enough money. I mean, the US Air Force wants to buy more F-35, F-22, but they don't have enough budget. So money is always scarce. But the question is how to get the maximum out of that resources. So it is more of a question of utilization. So there are a lot of reforms, like the Modi government has taken the major reform, which is in the form of Agnipath. So that is basically to contain the manpower cost or the future pensionary cost. But its results will be shown after a few years. But I think it was very, you must credit the government to take that reform, which is politically very sensitive. So I think the government is taking. And R&D, I think R&D has been a weakness in terms of the amount we devote to R&D and in terms of the performance of the R&D agencies. So in terms of the budget, I think we are spending around 4 to 5% of our MOD's budget on R&D, which is absolutely small, very small. And the problem is that we spend everything on DRDO, one organization, and monopoly. If you are, someone from of you are from economics, they know that monopoly doesn't gives you the best efficiency. And we need to have many other players who can actually work on R&D areas. We have IITs, we have private industry, we have DRDO. So I think the government has to devise a scheme where the R&D money can be distributed among many players, and they need to compete. And that is the way forward, I think, according to me.
Thank you very much, sir, for the insightful views on the R&D. So now over to the youth and students. If someone has a question, please.
आपने बात करी, चाइना इज द कंट्री हु इज वेरी डिटरमिन्ड, उनका विजन बहुत बड़ा है और विजन एकदम से नहीं आया. उनका जो विजन है चाइना का काफ़ी पहले से अराउंड अगर मैं यूथ की बात करूं, हमारे हिसाब से 15-20 साल पहले. तो इंडिया का विजन इतना कमज़ोर क्यों है? हम लोगों का विजन इतना डिटरमिन्ड क्यों नहीं है? और कैसे यूथ के हिसाब से हम एक बड़ा विजन, काफ़ी ज़्यादा डिटर्मिनेशन ला सकते हैं? ये सवाल है.
Well, I think this is a very tricky question to answer because we have to comment on our political system. I mean, it's not that we never had vision. So we had all these 5-year plans. I think the first plan was just after the independence, and so several 5-year plans have been prepared. But unfortunately, in our democratic system, it has been very difficult for the political leadership to stick to the plans. When I can talk about from the perspective of the defense 5-year plan, because that is something I have looked at very closely. And the first plan was prepared for the year 1964 to 69, and then we have prepared so far 13 plans. But after each plan, so why say that we are not determined? I mean, if we have a plan, but then the plan requires certain resources to implement. And MOD's plan has never been accepted or approved by the Cabinet Committee on Security. So if that plan is not approved at the highest level, obviously the Finance Ministry has the excuses not to fund the entire plan. So if your plan is based on assumption that you require 2.5% of GDP over the next 5 years to get to your plan objectives, but if there is no money, what to do? So that is where the political sanctity and the leadership's commitment actually comes into picture. So I think that is where we have over the years not shown a lot of maturity. Of course, the government has actually brought in a lot of reforms, setting up the CDS, then setting up the Defense Planning Committee to overcome those issues. But I think we need to be a little more serious in terms of our commitment to spend on defense. Because defense is a resource-intensive sector, and so there are a lot of shortages. So I'm not saying that any government can actually fulfill all the aspirations of the defense forces, but we should try our best to meet the maximum. Right? I hope that answers your. Yeah.
Why do you feel that we don't have a vision? 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you might have felt that our vision is not very clear. We were one day on one side, second day on the other side. But in the last 10 years, it would have become generally clear to you that the leadership or the political leadership of the country, which is running the country or which is making the policies, has generally a clear vision. We may not be achieving everything in very quick time. These things take time as they are complicated matters. The decision making does not depend on one or two factors. There are multiple factors, and those factors are very complicated, not simple and straightforward. So everything may not be yielding result at the same time. If you look at India's position with respect to its relationship with various countries in the world, whether it is US, Russia, Middle East, Europe, why do you feel that we don't have a vision? We are able to have good relationship with everybody, countries in all parts of the world, which help us further our national interest. Now, what is vision? Vision is exactly the same thing. So you should not feel that we don't have a vision. We have a vision, and we are moving in the direction of achieving whatever are our national goals.
Thank you very much for the esteemed speakers and audience for your valuable time and insightful discussion on the global weapon manufacturing.